Here.
Commissioner Perney.
Here.
Before we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence, I would respectfully ask that everyone in the room turn their cell phones off or put them on vibrate. Thank you. So now I'd like to invite you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now it's time for the Citizens Forum, a time for citizens to come and speak before the Commission on a topic that is not on the official agenda. Is there anyone that would like to address the Commission? Move on to awards and proclamations.
Item 4.1, presentation of plaques of appreciation to outgoing employee council members. Will Kathy Berlew, Sue Klein, Jane Eilers, Josh Foley, Greg Griswold, and Chad McCary please step forward?
Kathy, in appreciation for services rendered to the City of Salina for the Employee Council, Kathy Berlew. Thank you. In appreciation for service rendered to the City of Salina, Kansas and the Employees Council, Jane Eilers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy.
And in appreciation for service rendered to the City of Salina, Kansas for the Employee Council, Greg Griswold. Thanks. Appreciate it. We have no items for public hearing or items scheduled for a certain time, so we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Item 6.1, approve the minutes of January 12th, 2009. Item 6.2, resolution number 096590, appointing Lexi Weiser to the Animal Control Advisory and Appeals Board, Luann Dunn, Barb Shirley, and Amit Bhakta to the Convention and Tourism Committee, Ken Kennedy to the Planning Commission, Ellen Morgan to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and John Wachos to the Tree Advisory Board. Item 6.3, resolution number 096592, repealing resolution number 985379, which requires straight curbs in residential subdivisions. Item 6.4, rescind first reading ordinance number 08-10477, annexing a tract of land located at the southwest corner of Magnolia Road and I-135. Item 6.5, resolution number 096591, amending Article 15 of the Personnel Manual pertaining to vacation.
Are there any items that a commissioner would like pulled from the consent agenda? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve it.
Mayor, I'd move that the consent agenda be approved. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0. There is no development business. We'll move on to administration.
Item 8.1, second reading ordinance number 09-10482, vacating the remaining portion of the Claflin Avenue right-of-way east of Ohio Street.
This ordinance was passed on first reading January 12th, and since then, no comments have been received. Is there any public comment at this time? Not, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Mayor Vernier, I move that we approve repeal on second reading ordinance number 09-10482, vacating the remaining portion of the Claflin Avenue right-of-way east of Ohio Street.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve on second reading ordinance 09-10482. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Jelka,
Aye.
Commissioner Larson,
Aye.
Commissioner Peck,
Aye.
Commissioner Kearney,
Aye.
Mayor Vernier.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Item 8.2, special inspection. Sub-item 8.2A, discussion and consideration of accepting expression of interest forms for a special inspections task force Sub-item 8.2B, first reading ordinance number 09-10483, amending Chapter 8 of the Salina Code by amending Chapter 17 of the 2003 International Building Code pertaining to special inspections.
Mike?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. The report that you received as the blue sheet is a summary of the information that was provided to the Building Advisory Board, and I'll try to hit the highlights rather than go through it in full detail. But what is noteworthy, I believe, is adoption of the 2003 International Building Codes in 2004 included Chapter 17 entitled Special Inspections in its entirety without amendment. As I go on in my report, I'll touch on the items that are covered in that chapter. One thing to note is the items that are subject to Chapter 17 are unique and complex enough that they occur infrequently in our community, but not without, they do occur on occasion. Recently, there's been considerable discussion about administration of Chapter 17 and whether it should be retained in its present form, amended, or repealed, and the Building Advisory Board has received multiple staff reports on the topic and heard testimony from stakeholders in the construction and development community. As an overview of the provisions of Chapter 17 is written in the code and is currently adopted by the City of Salina, provided 10 bullet point items in the report. First of all, the work subject to special inspections is of such a nature that it's not practical for municipal inspectors to conduct the inspections. Not just Salina inspectors, but the building code's approach is that it's not practical for municipal inspectors in general. Secondly, categories of work subject to special inspections can be broken into two broad categories, one being on-site inspection of specific types of construction, and the second category being inspection of the manufacturing of steel and wood assemblies on the premises of the manufacturer. Third, the items subject to on-site special inspections include concrete construction, masonry construction, soil conditions, pile foundations, and sprayed fire-resistant materials. Fourthly, the provisions of Chapter 17 go into considerably more detail regarding the specific types of construction and construction techniques within the categories I just listed. So, for example, not all concrete construction, not all masonry construction, but I haven't gone into that next level of detail because we could be here all night. Fifthly, Chapter 17 also includes provisions for quality assurance and special inspections associated with construction in seismic and wind zones. Due to our location, those provisions are not applicable to Salina. Alternate test procedures are also provided, and I've not gone into great detail there, but those are very specific to certain circumstances. Chapter 17 currently provides that the permit applicant shall submit a statement of special inspections prepared by the registered design professional and responsible charge as a condition of the permit issuance. And what that means is that the registered design professional is to review the provisions of Chapter 17 as they apply to the project and identify special inspections that are required by Chapter 17. It is very prescriptive, and it does not provide discretion on the part of the design professional to determine in their own opinion. While the code may require it, I don't think it's appropriate in this case. It is prescriptive in that if this type of work is done, special inspections are required. The prescriptive nature of Chapter 17 doesn't specifically call for building official review of the submitted statement of special inspections, but it is prescriptive enough that discrepancies between the statement of special inspections and the provisions of Chapter 17 that could be noted by a review would require that the applicable special inspections be conducted. Once the required special inspections are identified, the owner or the owner's agent is required to employ the necessary inspectors to conduct those inspections. Special inspections are to be conducted by an agency or an individual approved by the building official that is independent, experienced, and educated in conducting those tests and has adequate equipment to conduct the required test. Manufacturers subject to the requirement could include local manufacturers doing steel and assemblies. One provision in the code contemplates accreditation of the applicable manufacturer by an acceptable accreditation agency. And there's previously been testimony before the Building Advisory Board about the difficulties and impracticalities as well as the costs of becoming accredited by a particular agency. Staff has not pursued that in great detail. That's something that could be taken up by the Building Advisory Board. And then lastly, throughout Chapter 17, there are record-keeping requirements imposed upon the special inspectors that provide that the required documentation is to be provided to the building official to be retained in the city's files. Don Mars is the chairman of the commission and is a design professional and has been involved in discussions with city staff, including myself, the city manager, the director of community development services, and the building official about alternate approaches to special inspections. And in the end, we concluded that it would be more effective to identify general decision points or approaches for the Building Advisory Board to provide us direction prior to trying to draft any type of an amendment. So on that basis, then, we identified 4 options that we reported to the Building Advisory Board at their last meeting. Option 1 was to repeal Chapter 17 in its entirety. Option 2 was to retain Chapter 17 in its entirety without any additional amendment. Option 3 was to modify Chapter 17 to grant greater authority to the design professional. And with respect to that option, I would note that it was staff's intention that the designer would administer the provisions of Chapter 17 without amending those prescriptive requirements of the code that I referred to, and requiring special inspections for specified fabrication and construction situations, and retaining the record-keeping responsibility with the City of Salina. The 4th option, which is probably the most thorough and most time-consuming, was to review and amend individual provisions of Chapter 17. As an example, that could be looking at the concrete construction that's subject to special inspections, as well as the required special inspections, and coming up with an alternate approach, whether they be required at all, how much discretion is allowed the design professional in that regard. Staff provided a recommendation to the Building Advisory Board, which first identified the need to consider whether some or all of the items currently governed by Chapter 17 merit some form of regulation and oversight. As a second point, then, identified that administration of Chapter 17 without amendment seemed inappropriate, and ultimately recommended a thorough review of the provisions of the chapter be undertaken as proposed in Option 4. At the Building Advisory Board, stakeholders in the design and development community were specifically notified of the Building Advisory Board's consideration of the topic in advance, and the Building Advisory Board heard testimony from the stakeholders and deliberated on the issue at length. A key point that they noted was the very technical nature of the code provisions under consideration and the merit of a task force of design professionals and stakeholders, since they were more familiar with the issues than members of the Building Advisory Board. Ultimately, the Building Advisory Board voted to make the following recommendations. 1, that a task force of design professionals and stakeholders be appointed to review Chapter 17 and recommend appropriate amendments, and that secondly, a moratorium be placed on the enforcement of the inspection of fabricators requirement included in the current provisions of Chapter 17. Staff has prepared this report to serve as the basis for Commission consideration of forming a task force, as well as the attached ordinance repealing the applicable portions of Chapter 17 to accomplish the intended purpose of the moratorium. With respect to conformance with the strategic plan, the proposed action is consistent with the vision statement that the City Commission recognizes their role and responsibility to provide policy direction, and that Salina will encourage and be supportive of industrial development, economic expansion, and market-driven tax-based growth. It's also compliant with the strategic plan state goal number 3, that the city will provide the highest quality of services consistent with governing body direction, and that the city will maintain growth and development policies that are up to date. There is no fiscal impact, and staff has identified 4 alternatives for your consideration. Alternative 1 would ultimately be basically to implement the Building Advisory Board's recommendations by authorizing the formation of a task force and adoption of the ordinance. Alternative 2 would be to provide alternate direction regarding the manner in which the City Commission would like to proceed with creation of the task force. Alternative 3 would be to provide alternate direction regarding adoption of the ordinance, repealing the provisions of Chapter 17 related to inspection of fabricators. And alternative 4 would be to choose not to create the recommended task force or adopt the ordinance, resulting in fabricator inspection requirements remaining in effect, and in essence charging the Building Advisory Board with the responsibility of preparing a recommended amendments to Chapter 17. As noted above, Alternative 1 is the recommendation of the Building Advisory Board and staff, and there is additional detail in Alternative 1 with respect to submission deadlines so that the dates would fall prior to the next Building Advisory Board meeting. I said I'd try to keep it brief, and I realized that was, and it's briefer than my report, but it wasn't all that brief, but I'd be happy to take questions.
Questions of staff?
Just kind of curious, we always use, and I forget the name of the code, but there's a certain body of codes that we customarily have used in the city, and I know that it's, or at least I'm told, it's a largely political process on how that code is drawn up. Would that be a process you could summarize, or?
Yes, with the help of the building official. With respect to this particular provision, it's in the International Building Code, and there is a code adoption process that the International Building Code Council goes through, and Mike has been involved in those actual meetings and attended them, and he is probably better prepared to respond to that.
Angelica. Yes, at the national level, there is a consensus process that's followed in the development of these codes. Chapter 17 that the board's being asked to consider, the commission's being asked to consider today, has been not only in this code, it's been in the earlier codes that had been adopted here in the city of Salina through the model code adoption process. So that consensus process results in this package of model codes, and then in the, as Mike mentioned, in the political process, those codes are reviewed on a local level by each jurisdiction, be it a city or county or state organization, and then those codes are melded and molded to fit the local jurisdictional needs. So I'm not sure if that answers your question completely.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
Mike, you might touch on how the national decision is made. Basically, that's where the model code is finalized.
The model code organizations have several standing committees that are charged with reviewing different sections of the code pertaining to subject. And then those code committees solicit suggestions for amendments to the code from various stakeholders. The committees go through a rather lengthy hearing process, make recommendations to the general membership of the model code organization. The city of Salina, for example, has 4 voting members, and we had the opportunity this last fall to go to Minneapolis and participate in the actual votes on the code changes, on some of the code changes. The entire code change process on the votes took 10 days, so it's a rather lengthy process. But so the committees make recommendations to the general membership, and then the general membership votes on those code changes. And so if you're familiar at all with the building code and understand how lengthy it is in its present form, obviously there's been a lot of debate and discussion that's gone into that process to both propose changes to the codes and debate the merits of those changes and then vote finally on those changes.
I don't work in this field, it's part of the reason I have questions, but is it true, some people who work in the field, tradesmen, claim that things get in the code because certain companies successfully lobby to get a requirement in that benefits attempts to sell their product?
There's been a charge that's made to that effect. It's a little bit there's a couple of different processes, and we're getting into kind of some technical differences now in the consensus process. The building codes are less subject to that because the voting members in the building code and the fire code are governmental members. They're not at-large members, associate members, trade members. They can only be governmental representatives. The trade codes are a more general consensus process that are made, voting members are allowed from the various trade organizations, industry organizations. Still, there is a feeling that because of the largeness of the process as a whole, that no single industry is going to be able to have undue influence in that total consensus process on which the codes are voted on. So, yeah, I've heard that in years past, that various industries, unions affect the code outcomes and the molding of the code. They make, I would suggest, they do make a lot of recommendations for code changes. They make a lot of proposals for code changes. How much influence, though, that they have on the final vote and what actually gets enacted and written into the code is anybody's guess, but I don't think it's that undue of an influence in the actual voting process.
I appreciate your answers. It's always my inclination to go along with the recommendations of the Building Codes Advisory Board, but appreciate the greater insights.
Commissioners, just to add on to that too, I mean, that's the beauty of it. In Kansas, we don't even have to adopt a building code if we don't want to, but we can, and we can take it and amend it just to whatever degree that we want to do that. So if at any time there is a code update that comes along and we find something that we think is, maybe more product-driven or, just really doesn't make sense, but for whatever reason it came in, we do have the ability to recommend that comes out. So we try to look at it. The problem is codes are pretty thick and there's a lot of stuff in there, but we do try to look at those things and try to get some of those out when we can.
With respect to this particular topic, I think that's the intention of the task force, is focus on this particular chapter and how it could practically be applied in Salina.
Mike, refresh me, because I can't find it anywhere. How many members, the timeline to pick the members, and is there any requirement on where the members come from?
The recommendation was that the task force be comprised of design professionals in the community and stakeholders. That stakeholder category can be a little bit broader in that it's most likely developers. We do have some fabricators in the community that might be subject to Chapter 17. There was no specified number. I think that's kind of a limited universe that would fit those two criteria. As far as timeline, the Building Advisory Board didn't identify the timeline that's in the report, but looking at the schedule, if we set a submission deadline of Wednesday, February 4th, that would allow 2 weeks to receive those expression of interest forms, allow the City Commission to act on February 9th, with the Building Advisory Board meeting on February 10th. Obviously, there wouldn't be any action, but we could at least report to the Building Advisory Board at that time the task force was formed and these members were appointed.
Would they meet once a month?
I think it'd really be at the discretion of the task force itself. We've had some discussion about some preliminary work that staff could prepare and we hopefully could do electronically in terms of soliciting initial impression of individual provisions of the chapter, and then we could do some prep work to bring them together. But it'd be as needed, I would expect.
And if this happens, if we do have this task force, is this forever?
No, it would be until they complete their recommendation on this particular topic. That recommendation would be provided to the Building Advisory Board. They then would act in terms of...
And then their job would be done?
Correct.
Okay. Was this done before? Seems to me like we had a task force for something several years ago. Was it something else or was it something similar?
Well, we've done the comprehensive plan, and we've also done EPA Phase 1 stormwater regulations that I'm aware of.
There have been various committees and task forces. Some time ago, there was a joint city chamber task force that dealt with broader issues. From time to time, we have committees we work with, whether it be plumbers, electricians, and so forth. We meet with property developers and architects and the infrastructure contractors as well. So we have what are more informal committees that we deal with, but that's the only task force that I can recall in modern time.
And was that work done in vain, or do you think it helped?
Well, yeah, I don't have all the recommendations in front of me, but it's my understanding that I think all the recommendations the accomplishments were made with regards to those particular recommendations at that time. It's been a few years, and they did follow that and track those things, and I think everything was done.
Okay.
If I might add, in a broader sense, I think some of the feedback is stakeholder input on the codes, and while this is in place, this is intended to be an opportunity to get that input and amend the codes, or at least take that into account in terms of forming a recommendation on amending this chapter.
And Commissioners, quite honestly, we've talked, in the Building Advisory Board's talked about special inspections for a long time, so the quicker we can get them in and get through this and get out and have a recommendation to you, we're going to do that so we can move on. Because there are a lot of other code issues as we look, further at adopting a newer version of the code that we want to get to, but we definitely need to spend the time that they want to spend on it right now.
Okay, thank you.
On page 4 of the blue sheet, it talks about options discussed by the Building Advisory Board. Option 1, repeal the chapter in its entirety, Chapter 17 in its entirety. I'm wondering, was that a close second to the recommendation that came out? Is that an option that maybe we should go ahead and go with today and perhaps still have a Building Advisory Board look further at this subject, but repeal the whole thing for the time being?
Right. There was a little bit of discussion. In fact, that's where the discussion started with the Building Advisory Board, kind of working through these in numeric order, and there was consensus that it merited staying on the books. There wasn't a lot of discussion or support for repealing it long-term in its entirety. There was some discussion about administration of Chapter 17 in the interim, and staff indicated that we would continue as we currently are, which is trying to work with the design community in terms of recognizing a project that might be subject to it and how we want to apply it. So the Building Advisory Board, when they talked about a moratorium, they focused on the inspection of fabricators, not the entire chapter.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike. Are there any other questions of staff? Public comment. Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
I would move that we proceed with with the process of forming a special inspections task force to review it's Chapter 17 of the International Building Code. Second, are these two separate motions?
Yes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to continue the process of consideration and accepting expression of interest forms for a special inspections task force. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0.
Mayor, I move we adopt ordinance number 09-10483 on first reading, which repeals provisions of IBC Chapter 17 related to inspection of fabricators.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 09-10483 on first reading. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0.
Item 8.3, authorized purchase of 14 disk drives to upgrade an existing storage area network device.
Mr. Rhodes.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I stand before you today to ask for authorization to purchase 14 new disk drives to upgrade one of our existing SANs. A SANs is a storage area network. It's a device with a lot of disk drives. They're really big, and that's where we store most of our data. We bought our first one in 2006. For backup purposes, it worked very well. We added more to it. It worked very well. We ran out of room. We bought another one for disk backup and bought another one for a bigger one for disk storage. My intention at that time was to take our first one and upgrade it so it could back up our big one. I would like to take this one and put it over in the Bicentennial Center as a redundant backup device. Every item that occurs on the one here will then get over there a second or two later for a good start to our backup recovery system. To do that, I have 14 250 gig drives. I need to upgrade that to 14 750 gig drives. We went out for bids. Normally, my budget is $350,000 for all the computer CIP stuff. We haven't brought the detail to you yet. That comes February 9th, so I would normally not come up here and ask you for this. Dell bought out EqualLogic. EqualLogic is the maker of these drives. They have a sale going on that goes away tomorrow, and it would save $6,290. And I thought that was enough to bring it before you today, a little bit cart before the horse, if you will. Bottom line is we pull out the disk drives, we add the bigger disk drives, we put in the Bicentennial Center, and we back it up. And that's what I'm asking. Staff recommends that the City Commission authorize computer technology to purchase 14 750 gig drives from Eagle Software in the amount of $13,700. I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Questions of staff? Thank you. Any public comment? Bring it back to the commission.
Mayor, I'd move that we authorize the Computer Technology Department to purchase 14 750 gigabyte drives from Eagle Software in the amount of $13,700.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize Technology Department to purchase 14 disk drives in the amount of $13,700. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0.
Item 8.4, second reading ordinance number 09-10481, amending Chapter 30.5 of the Salina Code pertaining to prohibiting smoking in public places.
Go ahead, Mr. Gage.
Thank you very much, Mayor, Commissioners. We have in front of you a second reading on the ordinance to the Clean Indoor Air Ordinance. I'm not going to go back over everything and go through an overview. We've covered that in the first reading. We also covered it in two public forums that we hosted, and I would like to tell the crowd that's here, most of these folks have been in those forums and definitely appreciate their input. What we've done is we're kind of making a presumption here, and we don't, obviously, the staff doesn't know quite where you would like to go on this ordinance, but if you believe that it's an ordinance you still want to approve in some form or fashion, we kind of outlined this. We think the first thing that would be good is to go ahead and take public comment, to allow everyone that opportunity, as you typically would on an ordinance. After that, to determine if there are any substantive amendments, just general conversation among yourselves. If there aren't any substantive amendments, you could definitely vote on the ordinance to approve or not to approve it. You could postpone it if you need more time as well. If you believe that there are substantive amendments, what staff would ask you to do is to go ahead and approve a motion to postpone this, probably for 1 week, because we still have a pretty tight timeline here. And then at that point in time, assuming that is approved, that would provide you time to discuss in detail any of those possible amendments. And then we would try to work with you and make sure we understand any of those amendments that would be voted on and approved, make sure that we are clear and understand what those mean, so that then the city attorney can draft that language for the next week, and that can be incorporated into the ordinance. So with that, I'll turn it back over. We have the same options that we basically had last time, and it's pretty open-ended that way. So,
Questions of Jason?
If we postpone it a week, regardless of the outcome, does that still give the parties enough time to do what they feel they may have to do to bring it to a ballot on, for April 7th?
yeah, I mean, I don't know that 1 week's going to make a lot of difference, and quite honestly, those folks can set their own timeline. It just, what we're trying to do is provide hopefully enough room in there that if they chose to move and move pretty quickly, that we could use that April election, but they could choose to take longer if they want and even go beyond that. It's really up to them, but I think it does. I don't think 1 week will harm you, but if you go out 2, 3, or 4 weeks, I think definitely that'll
Delay it too much.
create an impact.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I'm going to open this to public comment. A few ground rules. Please keep your comments brief and to the point. We have had one meeting on this already. We've had 2 public forums. We've killed half a Sherwood forest writing down all the comments. I've got mail that I owe postage for, sent by people.
Me too.
Thank the health department for that one.
Here's the envelope.
And I would also ask that as people come up, please give us your name, your address. If your point has been made before, we don't need to hear it twice. And let's hold all applause until the end of the show. So, with that, I'll open it for public comment.
My name's Jim O'Shea. I live at 2314 Hillside Drive here in Salina. I want to give you guys something here real quick, because this is what I'm going to refer to.
I'm great.
Okay. This was from our fair and impartial newspaper here in Salina, Kansas. Okay, last June. The gist of this whole thing is this, and they've got it right here. Keep on pushing for more. Where does it stop? Last Tuesday, I don't know how many of y'all were here, had a guy get up here from the health department, and he made the comment that people come in here to get physical or get medical help, come out and get in their car, sit down, put their kids in there and light a cigarette. He wants to get in there and stop that. Once you do that, when do you go into their homes? Okay? And here's another part of this equation. All right, I'm not going to take time to read this, but I'm going to read the bottom line here. And this is what's caused all this uproar. Okay, the current partial ban improves air quality, but still allows smokers to light up after 9 p.m. The smoke leaves carcinogens in the surfaces of the upholstery where they come in contact with non-smokers and young people. Give me a break. You go outside, you come in contact with car exhaust all day long. Kids go out and play all day long, okay? So, where do you stop? And then we got, thanks to Commissioner Perney, Commissioner Larson, and Mr. Gage, I got the financial outlay of our fine anti-smoking coalition. I don't know, you guys should have copies of that. That's a cash cow, folks. We don't get this kind of money to come up here and protest this. These people are getting grant. They got to justify their existence. If they don't, and that means causing trouble for everybody, they don't get no money. I don't know how many people have seen this, but it's a good chunk of change. Now then, for the last bit of my being up here. Mr. Peck, last time I was here, you made the comment just prior to your vote that you had the right to not have to smell smoke when you were in the restaurant. Do you remember that?
Probably something to that effect.
Okay, I voted for you, you know that?
Appreciate your vote.
Well, here's the deal, I voted for you to vote what I and our opponents wanted, not what you wanted, and you cast a vote based on what you liked. You made that statement.
You shouldn't
Okay.
have voted for me then.
I know, I found this out, I won't again, I guarantee you.
I won't be running again.
Well, thank you.
A lot of that going around.
Mr. Jilka, when this came out, I came to you about all this, and I said, you know, the five of you made an agreement with the people when we cast the votes the last time in '02. And you guys agreed that we could have the 9 to 5, smoking, if the owners so chose. Well, your rationale on that was this, that it didn't count, because 4 of you are different, okay? Well, if that's the case, then the vote shouldn't count, because there's 4 of you are different. But we know that's not going to happen. I do hold this, though. You are the only one left. You should be accountable. You, if anybody, should have voted no, because you were one of them that gave your word, and you agreed, yes, 9 to 5, and I'll stand by it.
Mr. Shea, can I ask you a question about your handout here?
Sure.
You, it says here that in a survey of businesses, 69% of those responding said they would be supportive of a 24-hour clean indoor air ordinance.
That leaves about 180 of them, okay, out of the 233. And that's another thing.
Well, my question is, how should we evaluate that kind of information
All
in front of
right,
us?
you take what they said, when you guys vote, you say, okay, the 69% that want it, let them have it. You guys are able to make adjustments with your decisions. The rest of the people that don't want it, put a sign out there in front of their businesses that say, we are a smoking business. Then everybody's happy, even me, because then it's fair. But the way things go right now, this coalition is a self-sustaining, and I'll guarantee you, if they don't get their money, they're not going to do squat. All right? These people won't stop. Our country has fought a lot of wars over rights, okay? And a right to make a decision, a right to choose what I do with my business if I had a smoking establishment. These other people do. And then there's one other thing, and I'm going to let Beth here discuss that with y'all. You guys have these pre-sessions where you guys sit down prior to coming in here, right?
Study sessions.
Mm-hmm. Miss Beth wants to talk to you about that when she gets up here. But guys, what you're doing is not cool. If you make the adjustments and say, okay, you know, another thing I'm going to bring up here before I get down. This thing right here, this piece of paper here that shows the breakdown of all the finances, I went to Miss Larson, asked her where I could find this. She sent me up to Jerry Moran's office, who in turn sent me to Mr. Gage's office, who had his secretary look it up, and she found out who it was. She called over there, and the person who answered the phone said they would get me this with no problem. Wait a couple hours, and call, and then go over. I waited a couple hours, called, didn't get hold of that lady. I got hold of the head man. Well, he informed me that it was not public information and I didn't need it. Okay? So then, I said, fine. I went back to Mr. Moran's office, told him what was going on. Well, they didn't think that was correct. And then when I was leaving, I happened to see Mr. Perney around the corner. Hadn't been for him, I wouldn't have this. Nobody would, because they weren't going to give it out. But he knew that it is a nonprofit organization, and they do get money from us, so therefore they had to divulge this. Well-kept secret. If I was getting this kind of money for something, you know? Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Mr. Shea, could I ask you one other brief
Okay.
questions? I've heard you on numerous occasions talk about how you fought for freedom, and I certainly respect you for doing that. But I wanted to just for a minute explore your concept of that freedom you fought
Okay.
for, because I know there's a lot of veterans that
Yeah.
support this ordinance, and we've even had veterans call city commissioners saying, make sure this applies to that BFW hall if it passes.
Right.
Do you believe that people should be able to drive a car without using a seatbelt?
Yes, I do. I don't need, I'm 61 years old. I don't
Did you,
need somebody to tell me how to
yes or no
keep myself
questions,
alive.
I don't want to take
Yeah.
everybody's time here. Did you fight for people's ability to ride a motorcycle without a helmet?
No, I didn't. I don't ride with one.
Did you fight for people's ability to smoke crack cocaine in the privacy of their own home.
Now, we're a whole different ballgame. We're talking there about something that is illegal. Cigarettes are not illegal.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Yes, please. Good evening, Shalom. My name is Daniel Joseph Jackson. I'm a rabbi. I live here in Salina, Kansas. I'm a Messianic Jew. I live at 518 South 12th. I served with the 101st Airborne in Vietnam. Now I'm going to give you a short history lesson. My mother, my grandmother, and grandfather survived Auschwitz and Dachau. My father, who is from Minnesota, served in World War II in the Infantry Division. My family, my mother and her family, was interned at Ellis Isle for 16 months, where they become citizens of this great country where my father and I fought for the very freedoms that you, the city council, enjoy. These rights are included but not limited to sit there on this city commission to be voted into public office and to vote yourselves. Now let's get some looking at the Constitution. This is my first night because I walk, so the people that have come before you in the last several weeks have touched on but not gone into detail of the following freedoms. The United States Constitution gives us rights, privileges, immunities. The United States Supreme Court in Roe v. Wade, an abortion case, in that case, the court gave us the very foundation and the very definition of freedom of choice. This case not only defined freedom of choice, but set out the very foundations of how freedom of choice is protected by the sacred document, the United States Constitution, hanging over there, and each individual state constitutions. United States Supreme Court has also recognized that a right of privacy or the guarantees of certain areas or zones of privacy of the property rights of the citizens outweigh public concerns or public health issues. Privately owned businesses are buildings. Privately owned business buildings is private, or a non-profit organization such as the VFW, the DAV, or the American Legion is not open to the general public, like this courthouse. These rights exist under the Constitution. Example, the doctrine of the eminent domain is in the Constitution to prohibit government from taking the privacy rights of private business owners. In various contexts, this court or individual justices have indeed found the roots of that right in the First Amendment found in Stanley v. Georgia, 1969, in the Fourth and Fifth Amendments of Terry v. Ohio, 1968, Katz v. United States in 1967, Boyd v. United States in 1886, and finally Olmstead v. United States in 1928. In the penumbras of the Bill of Rights in Griswold v. United States, found at 381 United States Supreme Court Reports at page 484, the Ninth Amendment, Goldberg was concurring in that, the concept of liberty is guaranteed by the first section of the 14th Amendment. In Meyer v. Nebraska, these decisions make it clear that only personal rights that can be deemed fundamental or implicit in the concept of ordered liberty in Palco v. Connecticut, 1937, are included in this guarantee of personal right of privacy. The right of privacy, whether it be founded in the 14th Amendment, concept of personal liberty, being jailed for smoking, restrictions placed upon the state's actions as we feel, or as the district court determined in the Ninth Circuit and the Ninth Amendment's reservation of the rights to the people, is the detriment that the state would impose upon the citizen by denying this choice altogether is apparent. Also, you are in violation of the Commerce Clause, and you're in violation of the full faith and credit clause of the United States Constitution, the due process clauses of the Kansas Constitution. These constitutions outweigh any public health concern or the appearance of a public health concern. Specific and direct harm where certain fundamental rights are involved. This court, the United States Supreme Court, has held that regulations limiting these rights must be justified by a compelling state interest, in which is a most recent case, a gun case of Heller versus D.C. And here there is no compelling city or state interest founded to warrant the ban on smoking. As it was found in Kramer versus Union Free School District in 1969, Shapiro versus Thompson, 1969, Sherbert versus Werner, 1963. The legislative enactments must be narrowly drawn to express only the legitimate state interests at stake. Again, Griswold versus Connecticut. How redundant is the government when the governing body is attempting to pass a flagellant tax on cattle farmers and hog owners? For all of those concerned here today, you have heard the false and audacious claims of the alleged smoking health risk, as well as those of secondhand smoking. Ever since the Kansas Attorney General's office got the state of Kansas involved in the tobacco civil lawsuit, I have written or called the Kansas Attorney General for the last 10 years seeking the following information, because the Kansas Attorney General represents us. It's a civil suit. In this lawsuit against the tobacco industry, these are the following items are requested by certified mail. And my certified mail has either been deterred or found upon the floor, maybe. A, statistical data analysis of the alleged tobacco claims. B, chemical analysis of the tobacco smoke, secondhand smoke. Who performed those tests? What scientists and what are their credentials to perform those tests? What scientific standards did these scientists use in performing the test? C, scientific protocols and procedures in determining the hazardous claims as proffered by the government and private entities. And finally, who paid for these studies? Taxpayers, government, or private corporations. To date, my requests under the Kansas Open Records Act 45-01 either has fallen on deaf ears or has been rejected. Personally, I'm a smoker. I've been smoking since I was 12 years old and I'm 55 now. I'm also a heart patient. I have 4 stents in my heart. I've had 4 heart attacks. I have some severe asthma. But my heart attacks was caused by plaque, by triglycerides. Furthermore, my asthma was caused by wet pleurisy, and my doctor right here in Salina has done a complete head-to-toe physical. None of my maladies are caused by my smoking, nor are they aggravated. I can outwork every one of you. I can outlast every one of you, whether it's swinging an axe, whether it's swinging a sledgehammer. I can outwork every one of you. For years, I've heard these different government bodies allude to the so-called studies. These are no more than white papers or misinformation propaganda by the government bodies. The City Commission cannot in good faith tell me and the rest of the voting public that you have hard, concrete evidence of the alleged health hazards you claim with smoking and secondhand. Now, can this City Commission provide the voting public with concrete proof smoking and secondhand smoking causes the effects you claim here today? No. You're relying on outdated data, outdated studies, and that's all they are, studies. Can you provide me and the rest of the voting public the information necessary to provide proof there actually exists a health risk from smoking and secondhand smoking? Nah. Let us see. A few years ago, the American Cancer Society, which was represented here last week, the American Medical Association, Center for Disease Control, all stated coffee was a carcinogen. And a few years later, they said chocolate was a carcinogen. And then a few years after that, they reversed themselves. Now they say wine helps you. These same government agencies reverse themselves. You are also stating that you want to protect children. You're not protecting children. I just came from the library. I've seen repeat sex offenders. I've seen pedophiles on the internet, surfing the internet. There's a lot of states that have bans on that. How come Salina don't have that? Same with fluoridation. Different cities in Kansas pass fluoridation. Fluoride is a highly toxic waste.
Excuse me, sir. I've let you go on now for almost 10 minutes.
I got 2 more pages.
Well, that's way too much.
You better make it real quick, because we've got a lot of
Mr.
other
Varner,
people.
I'm asking you to let me finish this. I have not been able to get here for the last 2 city forums because I have a spinal problem from Vietnam. I have 2 pages. Let me finish reading them, sir.
Do it quickly, then, please.
Thank you, Mr. Varner, Mr. Mayor.
It's veneer.
Huh?
It's veneer.
My apologies. Also, there's high toxic levels of mold and lead in old apartments in this city. City Council has not done anything with that. Now, I'm a paralegal, been in the criminal justice system for 32 years. In law, this is called facts, not in evidence. This council is operating on unfounded theories, not facts. You mentioned in the ordinance about these different things. I want to see an autopsy that says secondhand smoke caused this lung cancer. You can't, because there has been none. All studies. Your alleged public health policy is in violation of the United States Supreme Court holdings. The United States Supreme Court ruled a PHP, public health policy, cannot be in violation of the United States Constitution as well as individual states. Remember the temperance movement, people? That caused the passing of the prohibition. It didn't work. Be it today, alcohol has been proven medically, by autopsy and otherwise, how dangerous it is to the body. The United States Supreme Court has also ruled a government body, municipal corporation, state government, federal government cannot pass something that is a legal activity to make it illegal. Now here's the warning, if this ordinance is passed today or down the road, I, a rabbi, a citizen of the state of Kansas and Salina, will file a federal lawsuit naming every one of you, as well as the coalitions, whether they're clean air, tobacco, etc., in federal court. I tell you this because I like my opponents to know what I'm doing. In accordance with Title 18, United States, Section 241, 242, as well as out of Title 42, United States, Section 1983. I will seek a restraining order and injunction to prohibit the enactment or enforcement of this ban until a federal jury determines the constitutionality, not a judge. Now, consider your options. We have a lot of options here today, but yet these people are not willing to do that. As a purist of the state and federal constitutions and a Vietnam veteran, son of immigrants, I cannot nor will I stand here to take the abuse anymore. You're telling the American Legion, the VFW and DAV and other military and nonprofit organizations their service to their country was for nothing. Did you know that the bingo sponsors are nonprofits? The ARC, American Retarded Association for Children. Did you know there's other nonprofits that depend on that money that were here last week? Now, I'm also a recovering alcoholic, been sober 30 years. You going to tell me I cannot smoke in my AA meeting? You must act wisely as elected officials. Your path today must be chosen with wisdom, tempered with knowledge. Wisdom is the proper use of knowledge, as my rabbi would tell me. Now, this quote, and I got two quotes and I'll give you and I'll stand down. The first quote is, you're holding a job that the citizens, the voters, hired you to do, and it's only temporarily at best. As elected officials, you must answer to the voters, not the special interest group, not the lobbyists, and not these coalitions. These groups of nonprofit organizations, I will sue them too. It will cost you millions of dollars, it won't cost me a penny. Last week we had one of the most awesome things that happened in this country. Barack Obama was sworn in and the 44th president. I'm going to give you his words and I'll stand down. It is time for this elected government to be held accountable for your actions, to be transparent and to be open to the voters. It is time that the government be returned to the people for whom this government was meant for. Those words, we the people, for the people, and by the people. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Maria Charvat. I live at 2606 Plantation Drive, and I'm for the ordinance, and I will be brief. There's a lot of misconceptions going around that the Tobacco Prevention Coalition, we're all paid people. I'm a volunteer. I've been a volunteer since 1991 here. So actually, our funding only provides for 2 full-time people, and that's required for Level C funding for grants. So there's only 2 full-time paid employees out of all the people who are volunteering. So I just want to make that clear. When I get finished here, I have a Relay for Life meeting that I go to that I'm a volunteer at. So we have a lot of volunteers who are passionate about the health of our country and of our city. Well, Alan, when we went through this several years ago for the restaurants, we heard the doom and gloom from, everybody that business, all the businesses were going, the restaurants are going to go out of business and stuff. And as you can see, if you drive around, our restaurants are doing very well here in town. I called the county health department and asked for statistics on the number of restaurants and places of that serve food before 2001. the earliest they could give me was 2004 on statistics, how many places they inspected. So 2004, they did 265 inspections of places that sell food. In '08, last year, they did 283. So I think that kind of indicates that our restaurants and our places serving food are not going out of business because of our smoke-free policy. So please consider for the health of all of our people going smoke-free. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Pete Timmons, and I'm from Salina at 633 North 11th. My father, my uncles, and my brother served in the service for freedom. You guys are taking that freedom away from us by abandoning smoking in a bar. I respect non-smoking in restaurants. People that come into a bar to eat, if they're sitting by me and the smoke bothers them, I get up and walk away so that the smoke don't bother them. You guys are trying to take our freedom away from us. Why should they have gave their lives for our freedom and for your freedom? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jack Petty. I live at 857 Winter Drive. I'm retired. I don't own a business or have friends that own businesses that I'm not up here to grind the axe or anything. So there's no political or no motivation from businesses or anything like that, the reason I'm up here. And Mayor, I will keep it brief as you asked at the beginning of the meeting. I'm 74 years old. I have never smoked, and the reason I didn't, there's too many other things to do. Smoking's time consuming. But I'm retired from driving race cars for 25 years and retired from working on air conditioning and refrigeration, and retired from a few other things. But it's my opinion, well, I've been around secondhand smoke since the day I was born in a small house in the country. I've been around secondhand smoke all my life. My heart, my lungs, according to my doctor, is in perfect condition. And I was around secondhand smoke before it even come up that there was such a thing. And I think this takes, if this passes, takes too many rights from too many people. I think it's mostly about power. I don't believe in some of the statistics that they've come up with. I think it's opinions, a lot of it. And I think it just takes away too many rights from too many people, and I respectfully ask you to not do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Trent Davis, 2145 Hillside Drive. To keep from rambling, if you don't mind, I'll read this. And I'll shorten it. Sometimes, to protect the health and financial viability of a society, certain regulations have to cross into the realm of what's considered private property. Examples include the use of asbestos and other poisons in our homes, possession of explosives, use of motorcycle helmets, and even how much noise you can make. We mandate the use of seat belts to reduce the numbers of those permanently maimed from accidents and who eventually become wards of the state. In the end, your vote tonight will reflect whether or not this community thinks exposure to tobacco smoke is a good thing or a bad thing. The scientific evidence for tobacco's toxicity is rock solid. The full credence and credibility of the U.S. federal government has been used to stand behind this evidence. Naysayers will have you fall prey to double talk, usually coming from those who are either very much addicted to the drug or who feel they will have no livelihood without tobacco. There are those making billions in Carolina and many thousands in Salina, but their livelihood will continue. To doubt the scientific evidence is akin to still believing the earth is flat or that Elvis is still alive. There is compelling financial data that documents bars and similar establishments are still quite viable in the presence of a comprehensive clean indoor ordinance. What is more important to our physical health than the water we drink and the air we breathe? We ask of our society to provide good health care. The least we can do is to be proactive, practice preventive health, and use common sense to limit voluntary exposure to those substances and activities known to present high risk for disease. The financial burden of health care in our society is staggering. Legal or not, tobacco and alcohol are responsible for much of our annual health care spending. Our states come nowhere close to recouping these costs via the taxes on these drugs, and state budgets are overspent already. The immediate and delayed medical consequences of primary and secondary tobacco exposure cost a lot of money, much of it from Medicare and Medicaid. Those who smoke don't come close to reimbursing others for the health costs that they incur or for the lives ruined by chronic lung and cardiovascular disease, let alone the smaller numbers of cancer. Businesses allowing toxic tobacco smoke pay more in higher maintenance, labor, and health insurance costs. Our larger society pays down the road for the medical and disability consequences of this preventable exposure. We also pay in our children learning bad habits. Whether a parent smokes at home or not, rest assured that child knows that his or her parent smokes. As children tend to emulate their parents, a bad cycle is continued. Parents become the perfect marketing dupes for the nicotine pushers, a role model that the youth look up to, and at no cost to the tobacco companies. It really doesn't matter where the parent smokes. Protecting the health of owners, employees, and consumers is a responsibility of the community at large, as the responsibility of providing and funding public health falls upon the state. Regulation of agents that pose a threat to the community's environment or our fiscal viability, such as asbestos, supersedes the individual's rights even on his own property. We have many freedoms in this country, but not the right to knowingly injure our fellow citizens either directly or indirectly for financial or social gain. To water down protection from secondhand smoke suggests that some citizens are not as valuable as others. Exempting adult-only venues implies that the health of adults is not as important as youth. Youth know what goes on behind these closed doors and will be tempted to emulate the behavior. If such were not the case, teen drinking wouldn't be such a problem. Separating clubs with patios from those that don't is grossly unfair to the smaller facilities unable to build a patio, and tells the employees of that facility that must work in the patio that their health is not as important as someone else's. A level playing field for all businesses or places of employment is the only fair way to avoid suspicion down the road that this ordinance caused certain smaller facilities to close. A vote to not pass a comprehensive clean indoor ordinance tells our youth, our employees, our tourists, potential new businesses, insurers, and our consumers that this area is a me first, me now area that does not care what type of community we turn over to our future generations. The City Commission must look at the big picture and not miss this opportunity to improve the life of future Salinans. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary Schwartz, number 528 South College. An opportunity to follow someone so eloquently stating a lot of obvious things, and some perhaps not quite so obvious. First, my compliments to everyone involved in making the public forums a gigantic success, in my humble opinion. On the heels of that eloquence, let me suggest I simply want to advocate the proponents for the proposed new really stricter or strictest new smoking ban can simply, at your discretion, if you decide to vote no, I would like to invite at least 3 of you to vote no on this ordinance for the simple reason that that allows the proponents of the stricter ban to petition at the ballot to allow Salina city voters to vote yes for the proposed new stricter ordinance or to vote no against it. Seems to me to be a very simple process. It was eloquently stated, and it is more than implied in much of the comment, that there are goods, not so goods, not many in-betweens on this issue. Allowing the citizens to vote simply provides democracy from the grassroots up instead of from the top down. Let me also, while I'm thinking about it, this would also be an opportunity for the proponents of the new stricter ban to make it even stricter than it was submitted. Quite possibly could avoid smoking in private homes, cars, and the outside. That would solve a lot of the issues because we can more than assume this whole situation will be revisited in about 5 years. So I'm advocating for at least 3 of you to vote no on this ordinance, pass the responsibility on to the proponents of a new stricter smoking ban. Thanks.
Thank you. We're going to wrap it up if no one else wants to speak.
Jerry Vargas, 1417 Ponk Avenue. I was here once before and stated my displeasure with it just simply for the fact that it wasn't going to, if you decided to vote for this today, that I guess I was asking that we, the voters, should get a chance. As, like Mr. Schwarzenegger said, the 3 of you, give the voters a chance. Give us an opportunity to decide what's best for the city, for us in Salina. I've been across the state, larger cities comparable to us, and in 2002, you came up with this smoking ban, and everybody adhered to it, and it's working. It's working. You know, somebody comes along and gives you more numbers. Mr. Peck said he didn't want to get into numbers and studies and this and that because one could outweigh the other, and we could go back and forth all day long on this issue. But, you know, what we have is, I think it was mentioned that we were the first to adopt a policy in 2002. Other cities took our policy and took it one step further. And larger cities, and some maybe our size, they chose, their city commissions chose to do that upon themselves. I don't have the data, so I may be not correct in saying that their voters were given a chance. I think our voters, City of Salina, should be given a chance to determine whether we have this ban or not. We got it right the first time, people, and Mr. Joker, you should be proud that you sat on that. We got it right the first time, and I think you should take that into consideration with the other people you were on the commission at the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's one thing I forgot. I have epilepsy, and I walk down the streets and have convulsions. Are you going to pass a law that I can't walk down the street because I may have a seizure and hit the ground?
Not a related.
I don't say nothing to you guys. I have them. I've had them all my life. I can't get over them. it don't bother me. If it shakes people up because I have a seizure in front of their house, hey, tell them to get rid of it for me. I've been trying all my life.
Okay, thank you.
Randall Hardy, 816 Highland Avenue. I am in favor of smoking ban because I think it's a benefit both to the smoker and to the non-smoker because, at least from my knowledge anyway, that smoking has no beneficial results for anyone. And also I've quite familiar with Lawrence, Kansas, and I do know that they have a smoking ban, and it's walking down Mass Street there, it's really refreshing to be able to pick an eating establishment and not have to worry about whether there's a smoking section or a non-smoking section, and enjoy the restaurant. And restaurants there are packed. The restaurants are not affected by way of losing business because of the fact they do not allow smoking. The other thing I was thinking of is that, I don't know how many years ago, the airline industry went through this whole process too with allowing smoking sections on airplanes and decided that non-smokers were affected by the smoke as well as the smokers, of course, and decided to remove smoking from the airline altogether to take care of that situation. I think the same thing applies to restaurants in that it's difficult to keep or to confine the smoke to one area of the restaurant. I think all diners are affected, and I think it's too bad to think that you're walking into a restaurant and not knowing how you're going to be affected or maybe not affected by the atmosphere of the establishment there. So I'm in favor of just eliminating smoking altogether from the eating establishments and other public places. Thank you.
Thank you.
Point of question real quick, Jason. If I'm not mistaken, the Lawrence ordinance was actually taken to the Kansas Supreme Court and,
Yes.
and upheld, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Susan McClure. I live at 1104 North 10th Street here in Salina. You've seen me here before. And first off, I want to thank you all for giving us all this opportunity. I've been able to go to websites for the commission, and the Salina Journal has had a message board on their website that talks about this. And you guys have been very, very open with us, and I thank you for that very much. I had a proposal that I gave Mr. Gage earlier. Mr. Gage, were you able to give them their copies? Okay, thank you. So I will not read that. It's long, it's involved, and it once again talks about personal rights, adults, free choice, free market system, all that stuff before. I do have a couple things. I have a 17-year-old daughter. I'm a single mom. I raised her smoking in the house. She's a gifted student. She was selected as one of the top 50 youth 4-H leaders in the state of Kansas 2 years ago. She's been to the National 4-H Congress. She's been invited by Yale University to apply for college. I smoked around her all my life, and my daughter, who wants to be a lawyer and eventually a congressman, said, and I know she's only 17, she can't vote yet, but she is our future. We're an example of it. She said that she doesn't see why government should tell a business how to run it. She hates smoking with a passion. She's hated it her whole entire life, and I've tried to smoke outside, and I don't smoke in the car with her. She despises it to this day. And she says that if I spend my money on a business and I put my time and my effort into it, then nobody has the right to tell me what to do with it. And that's a message from my 17-year-old daughter, okay? No, I don't believe that you should be able to tell me whether I wear my seatbelt in my own car, and no, I don't believe that you should be able to tell someone who owns a motorcycle whether they can wear a helmet or not. I know that you brought those questions up, Mr. Jelka, so I'm answering those. I think that those are personal choices. You know, if I want to take a chance with my own health, I can take a chance with my own health. I am an adult. It's my choice. Also, the gentleman that got up, he lived on Hillside Drive. I remember that. I don't remember his name. Trent? Was that his name? Yes. Trent Davis, yes. As said, very eloquent. But I've got some questions, because he stated twice here now that the taxes on tobacco products don't cover the costs of ETS-related healthcare costs. Is that correct? Okay. How much does the state spend on ETS-related healthcare costs?
In Governor Sebelius's 2006 report, the state took in somewhere around $280 million in tobacco taxes.
Okay.
Spent $1 billion on tobacco-related bills.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
That's from the state of Kansas.
Okay, thank you. I could find the information on what the taxes, what was took in, but I couldn't find the information on what was spent. So I wondered about that. Okay. And he also made a point about if we allow the patios or exempt some things, we're saying that some employees aren't as valuable as others. My answer to that is, in bars, I can't answer for the others because I don't work in them. I've been a bartender for 25 years. But in bars, as I said before, 90 to 95% of the employees smoke. I just don't understand how a clean air ordinance is going to make a difference to somebody who smokes. I mean, your secondhand smoke isn't bothering me while I'm smoking. That's my argument for that one. And someone else also brought up Lawrence. In that handout that I gave you, there's Hutch is discussed. Hutchison City Council, in their executive session, decided not to bring up a stricter voting ban even on their public agenda, because they determined that they had no business in private business. So if you want to compare one town to another, there you go. And that's pretty much all I'm going to say, other than I would ask you to look at the last page of that handout, because it's actually a proposal if you want to pass this ban. Like I say on the first page, I'm a smoker, and I want to respect non-smokers' rights. If I choose to pull smoke into my lungs, that does not give me the right to blow it down theirs. I understand that. My rights stop where theirs begin. But their rights stop where ours begin too. It's a legal activity. If we smoke anyway, don't claim secondhand smoke is hurting us. Okay? But the proposal was that if you must pass a ban, please read these amendments. I won't read them out loud. You have them in front of you. And think about proposing this decision, or, as a couple people have asked, take it to the public vote, please. Oh, one other point somebody else brought up. They said that the tobacco, clean air, the coalitions and stuff are a cash cow. The other lady said no, it's only enough for 2. Whatever. Hutchison also stated that if a coalition wanted something on the ballot, they had to get a petition, they had to go out, they had to canvass, they had to get enough signatures to equal 25% of last year's voter turnout in order to get something on the ballot. I don't know who else paid, I don't know how much money they get, but that's their job. Why are you doing it for them? Let them do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rodney Brown, 433 Wrong here in Salina.
I'm sorry, sir, what was your name again?
Rodney Brown.
Sorry, I have a cold. Not from smoking. I used to smoke. I smoked for 22 years or so. I'll be 44 in a couple of months. Well, what y'all going to do for me if I already have all these problems that you say that we're going to have because of secondhand smoke? It ain't going to cure me. I'm going to die anyway. I don't have these problems. I have clear lungs. I haven't smoked for 4 years because that was my choice to quit. You know, nobody told me to quit. Nobody said I couldn't smoke. I did it because I wanted to. You know, I drive a truck for a living. I sit on my ass all day, excuse me, sit in a truck all day long and drive and look at people and watch idiots on the road. And, you know, I go to these other states like Colorado who has non-smoking. Guess what I get a smell walking in the building? Every time I walk in the building, somebody else exhaling. Go in the building, there's no cigarettes. Go in my truck, there's no cigarettes. But I got to sit in there and put up with it when I walk in the door. Every time. Same thing in Kansas City. Same thing in St. Louis. Same thing in a lot of places I've been. You're not going to stop smoking everywhere. So where are you going to keep me away from it? You know, restaurants, I like the idea I don't have to sit down, pay attention, or I can sit down and not smell somebody else smoking while I'm eating. I like that. You know, that's cool. When I go to a bar, that's my choice to go there. If I want to go to a bar that has cigarettes in it, I'll go to a bar that people smoke. If I want one, I hear now have bars where people don't smoke. I don't go there, but I hear they have them. But that's my choice. I haven't been in the military. I'm not a veteran. You know, I'm not God Save the Queen. But I should have the choice, if I want to go someplace where somebody's smoking, to go there. You're not going to take it out of my car, you're not going to take it out of my house, and you shouldn't take it out of my bars. Not that I drink a lot, but it's my choice. I can go home and take a shower, get rid of that smell. You know, there's just, I don't know, that's really about all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, real briefly, I didn't forget something. I had a customer ask me to ask the coalition a question also. Because of all the studies also done on alcohol and things like that, he wanted me to ask you a question. He said that you're worried about the secondhand smoke when you go into places where adults go, bingo parlors, bars. You know, you want it out of everywhere, correct? Okay. If you're that worried about your health, then why in the hell are you in a bar drinking?
Mayor and Commissioners, I'm Yvonne Gibbons, Del Myers from the Salina County Health Department. Sorry about the postage cost. We'll get back to you on that. As observers and participants in the recent public forums concerning the proposed clean air ordinance, we felt that as public health employees, we needed to speak to some of the questions and comments that were made by public attendees. One of the essential functions of public health is to protect people from health problems and health hazards. First, there was concern about personal rights versus public health. No one is suggesting that smokers quit smoking. They have every right to continue. However, the right to contaminate the air where other people are present is the question. It is a non-smoker's right to be able to enter into any public area, just like it is the right of a disabled person to be able to have access to any public facility. All public facilities are required by the Americans with Disabilities Act to adapt their facilities to meet the needs of the public. Business owners do not have a choice whether they should or should not comply with this law. Restaurant owners are required to follow safe food handling practices to protect the health of the public. They do not have an option. Child care facilities and child care homes must meet certain minimum guidelines and health standards in order to provide safe care for children. They do not have an option. Citizens and businesses are not allowed to dump raw sewage or other contaminants into the public water supply. There are rules governing it because it's a public health hazard. During the pit bull ban discussions, the commissioners had to consider the rights of the individual versus the protection of the public and decided in favor of the public. There were comments made as well that this ordinance, if it were to be passed, bars and bingo halls in town would have to close. Common sense tells us the people who patronize these establishments will continue to go and will step outside when they need a cigarette. Perhaps these bars will see an increase in patronage because non-smokers will feel comfortable in visiting these establishments. CDC has studies that prove that have not demonstrated a decrease in business due to clean indoor air laws. Third, there were questions about the science behind the real effects of secondhand smoke. There is no safe level of exposure. Health may even be compromised within 30 minutes of exposure. The body of evidence to support this is overwhelming. Studies that were done in other cities, including Helen, Montana, and Pueblo, Colorado, have demonstrated a significant reduction in heart attack rates since their clean air ordinances went into effect. Salina has always been a leader in protecting the health of its citizens, and your vote today has the potential to save lives. Thanks. Del?
Del Myers with the Health Department, and I'd like to thank you guys for the opportunity to talk and for all the public forums and everything that you've had. That's been, I think, really helpful to get a dialogue going about this whole issue. I'd just like to kind of address some of the comments that have been made about secondhand smoke and reason for the ordinance. We know that drinking is a legal activity, but when a person drinks and drives, it puts the health or has the potential to put the safety of other people in jeopardy. That's why we have drunk driving laws, and this is similar. Smoking is a legal activity, but when it has the potential to harm others, that's when we look at passing ordinances on that effect. Sadly, many of our brave military veterans have become addicted to tobacco during their service time, and a lot of them are in poor health now, and they're often unable to enjoy socializing in veterans organization because of that exposure and the secondhand smoke on their health conditions. Secondhand or smoke-free ordinances have been have been challenged but upheld in the court system of the United States for years. So constitutionally, there really is not a reason to oppose that. In Pueblo, Colorado, just to kind of give you a little example, they had a smoke-free ordinance that took effect on July 1st of '03, and in the 18 months before the smoke-free ordinance was passed, the rate of hospitalizations for acute heart attacks was 257 per 100,000 people. In the 18 months after the ordinance was passed, the hospitalization rate for acute heart attacks was 187 per 100,000 people. So that's 70 lives per 100,000 people per year. And if you translate that into our about 50,000 people in Salina and Saline County, that's 35 lives saved every year just by passing the smoke-free ordinance. And I would respectfully ask that you consider strongly voting in favor of the ordinance and in favor of better health for all the citizens of Salina. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Owens. I live at 332 West Cloud here in Salina, Kansas. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting tired. It states in section 30.5-1, it states numerous studies, and it says numerous, have determined that the ETS is a source of exposure to indoor air contaminations that are casually associated with respiratory illnesses, lung cancer, asthma, and emphysema. I'd like to actually probably put this to Trent Davis. What are the numbers and the studies on that secondhand smoke with these billions of people? How did you come up with these numbers? I mean, what people actually came in with it? I mean, where did these numbers come from to begin with?
The dollars?
Yeah, as far as the dollars that you're trying to say that these casual secondhand smoke, or the secondhand smoke, or the smoking is what's causing this, the billions of dollars that are being spent?
The figures I gave you are for tobacco-related health expenses.
Okay, well then, what is the, what's the numbers on the casually associated illnesses?
That I don't have, I'm sure it generated, but you have to understand that that includes bronchitis, the emphysema, the runny noses, the sinusitis, the sore throats.
Okay.
The heart attacks, the asthma.
Okay, so anyway, the studies, these are based on assumptions though, right? These are based on assumptions. You're not just saying that this is...
That's based on working in emergency rooms and being a doctor.
Okay, I'm also a medical assistant also, so I'm not...
Ma'am, if you could please address your
Okay,
comments to
well,
the
what I'm
commission.
trying to basically say is that these studies, you can't take it by these studies because people they have all different kinds of health. If you exercise, if you eat right, if you, whether you smoke, you don't smoke, you eat fast food, whatever, there's different things that come into play with this, with the problem of the smokers and the non-smokers and the diseases that we're supposedly getting. I don't see where the numbers are falling on that. Anyway, I think basically the main problem we have here is it's a lot of these people are just fighting in here because of the bars. More so the bars, the amendment that we have already, it does good for the restaurants. I mean, the restaurants I don't think are having a problem. What we're basically griping about is the bar situation. And we've compared different places. I went up to Wichita this last weekend, and up in Wichita what they have done is they have and a lot of people aren't going to like this part, but they have a $250 tax that they pay for a sticker which is on the outside of the door of the establishments and this is hotels, bars, restaurants, and everything. It either says smoking or non-smoking. You pay the $250 tax if you have the smoking, which also allows those bars in numerous places in order to sell tobacco if they choose also. Anyway, okay, I'm nervous again. My bottom line is I think what we need to do is go back through this and change some of the wording that is in here as to where smoking should be allowed and not allowed. Thank you for your time. Sorry,
Mayor?
Yes.
A quick point of clarification. I didn't want to interrupt, but the term is causally.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Not casually, but causally.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have anything new to bring up?
Marvin Westhusen, 718 North 7th. I just got a question for the commissioners. You've already made your mind up, right?
No.
No, sir.
No, sir.
It hasn't been made up yet?
Nope.
Okay, I'm a smoker, and I'm against the smoking ban. I started smoking when I was 14 or 15 years old, and there was nobody put me in the hole, throw dirt in my face, and I'm still doing it. I can't see what the deal is here. Secondhand smoke really don't bother nobody. If they go into a place where they are smoking, then walk back out the door. You know what I mean? I think the business owners like the bars, stuff like that, need to regulate whether they want smoking or non-smoking. I don't think it should be up to a coalition to detect what we're going to do. And it shouldn't be up to the commissioners. I'm sorry, but, I got nothing against none of you, but this is the way I feel about it. But I think it ought to be up to the business owners, like the bars, the fraternal clubs, and all this. That should be their decision, whether you smoke or you do not smoke. I think it's garbage. The coalition is trying to run our lives, and that don't get it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, my name's Daniel Jackson.
Sir, would you be really brief?
Yes.
You've been up here once.
Peck, to answer your question, yes, the Kansas Supreme Court did uphold the Manhattan and Lawrence city ordinances. But like I told you at the beginning, I'm going federal. The United States Supreme Court has knocked down numerous bans on the East Coast. And these coalitions will find out I'm not a man to play with, because I'm going after them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ain't no luck about it.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is James Wilson, and I am a citizen of this fine community. I'm here basically for the same reason everyone else is here today. It's to fight for our rights. Right now, non-smokers have all the rights that they want. They have the right to go into any business that they prefer, and they also have the choice to patronize businesses that voluntarily have banned smoking. Last week, an elderly gentleman was in here and he stated that he smoked for 55 years. His doctor advised him that he needed to give up smoking or he would probably die within 5 years. He chose to quit and is still alive some 20 years later. There was no guarantee that he would have died in 5 years had he not quit smoking, and there was no guarantee that he would have lived longer than 5 years had he not. The fact of the matter is, he did stop smoking. He started taking better care of himself, started exercising, started eating right, and 20 years later, he's still alive. The fact of the matter is, he had a choice. The doctor gave him a choice. No one stood up and told him he had no rights anymore. There was also a 29-year-old lady that stated that she would go a lot more places if her rights were honored. I only have one thing to say about that. What makes you think that they would want you in their businesses, being a self-absorbed hypocrite? You know, who are you to think that your rights are more valuable than anyone else's? There are some people who want to make exceptions to the amendment, or are willing to accept amendments to your ordinance in order to save their rights, such as bowling alleys, bingo halls, and any other place that children may be involved. These business owners' rights should not be compromised either. If it is that important to you, then petition these owners to have a clean air night for children. That is your right. Get off your butts and do the work yourself. Don't expect this commission to do that work for you. It is our right as American citizens, stated in our Constitution, to live free and prosper. By voting for this smoking ban, you're taking away our rights to live free and the business owners' rights to prosper. As for workers' rights, most businesses already do not allow smoking inside. You have the right to choose to only seek employment in these establishments. The owner of my bar is a non-smoker, but he reserves the right of his patrons to allow smoking because we are majorly smokers. If you're going to play God or my Savior, then I'd like to know when you plan on starting to build the plastic bubble that you'll need to let me live in to protect me from everything that could kill me, such as asbestos, dust, pollution, the sun. Are you going to disallow the sun to shine because it causes skin cancer? Radon is the second leading of cancer. You're going to need to put me in a bubble to keep me protected from that. Can you do that? Can you promise me that you're not going to allow me to die? I don't think so. The fact is, everyone, someday, somehow, is going to die, and there's not a darn thing you can do about it. Voting for the rights of all people, not just non-smokers. That's what I'm asking you to do here today. Kind of winded because I just rode my bicycle over here. I didn't realize that the meeting was so early today. I thought it was at 6 o'clock like it was last week, so I apologize. I'd like to thank you for your time, and once again, I would like to state, God bless America.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to wrap this up now. If there was going once. Again, please keep it brief, and if the point's been made, we don't need to hear it again.
is Leonard Dahl. I reside at 328 Woodlawn in Salina. I'm also the owner and operator of a tavern called The Hideaway at 540 Willis. I'm a little operation, a one-man store. I'm the bartender, I'm the waiter, I'm the cashier, I'm the bookkeeper, the janitor, and the maintenance man. If I run a good business, people will enter. If I run a sloppy business, they won't. I feel that I have a right to run my business as I see fit. I also feel my barber on the corner has a right to run his business if he prefers to smoke and will allow smoking in his barber shop. If he has a sign on the door that says smoking is permitted, you have the right to either enter or not enter. There is no shortage of barbershops in Salina. Same way there's no shortage of bars and taverns in Salina. There are 5 non-smoking bars in the city of Salina. If you prefer to drink in a smoke-free place, pick one of those. And I can guarantee you this, if my smokers quit smoking, and I have seen a trend over the last 5-10 years, there's not near as much smoking going on as there used to be. When it gets to the point that those people that object to smoking or are non-smokers can pay the freight on my bills, since I'm the responsible party, at the time that the non-smoking, I feel comfortable in switching to a non-smoking policy, I definitely will. Now, I also have a number of questions. And from the first day that I got involved in this, I would like to know this particular ordinance, as it's written, who wrote it? Did you all sit down in chambers and write this ordinance? Did someone else in the city offices write this ordinance? Where did it originate?
Let me answer. I'll answer that, Mr. Dahl. My partner, Paula Wright, and I prepared the draft ordinance, drawing wherever possible from ordinances that had been otherwise adopted in Kansas.
In other words, the words as I'm reading here are the words that came out of your office with no additions or subtractions or amendments.
At that point. There were the 2 amendments that were made.
The one on the 25th?
On first reading, I think maybe you were here, but those are the only modifications that...
Well, having been in business 42 years and been involved in the laws and ordinances on drinking, I must say that this is the most comprehensive thing that I have ever seen. It reads to me like it's a mission statement of the city of Salina. We start off numerous studies. Where are these numerous studies? I'd like to see them. It's determined that ETS is a source of exposure to toxic air, right? Associated with respiratory diseases. How about the other things in Salina that could cause this? There are many, many contributing factors, but I don't see that we're limiting them. Non-smokers need protection from exposure. I would assume that most of them are adults and can make some life choices for themselves. They shouldn't need a governing body to dictate how they're going to live their life. We drop down a little bit farther. Accordingly, it shall be the public policy of this city to promote public health. This sounds good. But you know, I go to the grocery store quite often, and I see some things that I just shake my head about. I've listened to TV and radio saying that the dilatory effects of some foods we eat, that the American citizen is getting pretty sloppy and fat, that kids can't run the mile track anymore, that the state of our health is really deteriorating. Well, if this is the case, shouldn't the food police, as well as the smoking police our grocery stores and our restaurants? Mayhap it would be a very good idea for each restaurant to submit a menu to our health people to see if they're eating properly. Mayhap we should police the grocery stores.
Sir?
Yes.
point.
We're talking about a smoking ordinance, not motion.
Our talkings, accordingly, it shall be the public policy of this city to promote public health. That is your word, sir.
No, it's not my word.
Well, it's your words? Somebody's words, because I'm reading it right here. Article 1, Smoking Regulations, Section 30.5-1, Public Policy.
It's my words until the city commission either acts or chooses not to act.
Okay, now I will ask the question of my set of commissioners, Mayor, the rest of you. Shall it be the public policy of this city to promote public health?
It's not the only question today, but yes.
I didn't hear you, sir.
That is not the only question today, and your comments are repetitious and
They may be, sir.
Particularly adding anything to the point.
That my livelihood.
But yes, overall, we are partially charged and partially here to promote the public health. Yes.
It appears to me that we are on a slippery slope.
The difference being, Mr. Dahl, is, and I have been to your tavern and enjoyed your dogs and the fact that you don't accept tips, but the difference being, and I could shed 50 pounds easily and probably be in better shape, but my propensity to overindulge isn't putting any weight on you, okay? Your smoking with me in the same building or room, to some degree, likely has adverse effects on my health. I don't care how bad it is. That's not for,
I have to ask the question, did someone force you to enter the building?
No, sir.
Were you aware there was smoking going on inside?
When I frequented your bar?
Yes.
Yes.
So you made a choice.
Yeah.
The enjoyment and the relaxation that I might offer versus your health risk. You made a choice. Why can't the rest of the citizenry make their own choices?
I think that's a great idea. I think it's a great idea. And I think this should come to a vote. And so I would encourage that.
I have several other questions if I have time, sir.
You really need to hurry, because we won't make any decision if we're here all night.
Well, I've always felt that I owned and operated a private business that was open to the public. I did not know that I was a public building. I pay the rent, I pay the maintenance, I take care of it. The city has no input. Fact is, they're kind of a drain on the red line. Cost me a little bit to stay in business through licensing. But at what point does any private business become public business? I can understand the building here. I can understand the library. I can understand the health department. Those are public and they're paid for by the taxpayers as a whole. But no one is paying my rent for me. That responsibility is mine, as well as the conduct of myself and my patrons. Am I getting through to anybody? A private business, by its very definition, is a private business. Yes, we must conform to certain rules and regulations. But is the next step going to be, since you can't smoke in my place, that a certain type of food cannot be served? Potato chips, for example? I certainly do hope that the commission will postpone this. I hope they will table it, because it opens up a whole can of worms. And there are a lot of concerned citizens in this community. I already have gotten wind of a fund to promote the total welfare of the city. Things on their agenda: it's known that a lot of people get hurt in automobile accidents. If we lower the speed limit 15 miles an hour, there will be less accidents and less damage. Carry this to its extremes, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I guess that's it for public comment. We'll bring it back to the committee. Commission, we do have a number of amendments that have been proposed. Are there amendments to this ordinance that any commissioner would like to bring up at this time?
One thing I wanted to question, don't we need a motion on the floor, though, before we can get into amendments, or is that not the way you want it?
I think probably the question that Mayor may want to clarify is just simply, is there interest in amendments? If there is interest in moving forward with some amendments, you may want to go ahead and take a motion to postpone the action until next week, on the thought that you're going to need some time to talk about those amendments, and then once you clarify to staff what your intention is, it'll give time to get that drawn up and put in the second reading for next week.
I will certainly do not want that one way or another. I want to vote and get this off the table today. Speaking for myself.
I would like to make a general comment before we make any motion. May I do that? And I would like to propose an alternative motion.
Well, tell you what, since he's not going to do that, I'm going to jump in. You didn't make your alternative motion, so I'll jump in. 7 years ago, I was the last person to speak, and I'm going to...
I was looking for permission from the mayor. I was looking for permission from the mayor to make that alternative.
Go ahead with your comment.
Okay, my comment, and this will take about 4 minutes, cut me off in 4 minutes. I want to go back to the beginning. Mr. O'Shea brought up a journal editorial, and I want to bring up my journal editorial. 4 years ago, the journal, under Mr. Bell's guidance, begrudgingly endorsed me for this office and called me a loose cannon. And today I brought my loose cannon, which was a gift to me from one of my supporters after I was elected. I do want to say that a lot of times our decisions up here are not necessarily 100% based on the facts. I have a lot of pressures on me right now. You may notice, if you're very observant, that my ears are red. My ears are red because my blood pressure is up. My blood pressure is up because of the ongoing discussion we've had and the difficulty of making a decision. I very much respect Dr. Trent, Dr. Nina Ainsley, who sent us each a copy of the actual report of the Pueblo study. Dr. Bill Cathcart-Rake, who was my treasurer in my campaigns, all of whom heartily endorse a more comprehensive smoking ban. My family, we know in America our families always come first. My wife of 41 years, 4 months, 20 days, and counting, does not endorse this ordinance. Neither does my son of some 30 years, who lives in Salina and is a voter in Salina, and neither does my son, who's a resident of Lakewood, Colorado, who is a U.S. Marine and veteran of 3 tours of the current War on Terror. So I am between the proverbial rock and hard spot. Do I please my family? Do I please my supporters? Do I just have a stroke and exit the meeting since my blood pressure's up? I don't know where we are in my 4 minutes. So it comes down to I have not yet made my final decision. The interesting thing about procedure for the general public is that this is if we vote on this measure itself, this is a roll call vote. That means alphabetical order, Commissioner Jilk is first, Commissioner Larson second, Commissioner Peck is third, I am fourth. If those 3 vote the same, it's all over. If those 3 don't vote the same, it's a 2-1 vote, and I get to be a decider. I get to decide whether to make it a tie and let Mayor Vanier be the decider, or I get to decide to go with the 2-person majority and make the decision. And at this point, my feeling is the decision could go either way if we were voting in the next couple of minutes on the base ordinance. Commissioner Jilk has already stated that we'd sure like to settle this matter today. But there's been a lot of discussion. Almost everyone opposing this ordinance has discussed the matter of rights and the desire to take this to a vote. So here's my motion, my loose cannon motion. My motion is to make this issue an issue of the upcoming city commission election, which there's still time till noon tomorrow for candidates to file. And to do that by moving that this matter, the second reading of this ordinance, be postponed until the April 20th meeting of the city commission.
What is your reasoning for that?
I thought I gave that. My reasoning is it makes it an election issue. Candidates can declare themselves for or against this motion, this ordinance, and we have 2.5 more months to discuss it in the community as a whole, and to elect people that will either adopt the ordinance or reject the ordinance based on their public statements to be made in the next couple months.
Easy for you to say.
I'd have more sympathy for that motion if you were going to announce right here and now you're going to be a candidate.
I am not going to be a candidate. I prefer to say I do not choose to run, which is a Calvin Coolidge.
There is a motion on the floor to postpone this decision, to postpone second reading of ordinance 0910481 until April 20th. Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of a second.
Well, I was hoping to be first since I was last 7 years ago, but I'll be second. That's okay.
Okay.
I'm not as entertaining probably, but a number of comments. First of all, there was something said early on that comparing the issue of secondhand smoke to fluoride. Fluoride is in the public drinking supply of about 90, Dr. Adams would know, I want to say 97% of the communities in this country, give or take a percent or so. The debate over fluoride, like the debate over the health effects of secondhand smoke, ended a long time ago. So I'm going to set that aside. Veterans are very split on this issue. Some say they fought for freedom and we shouldn't even consider this. Others are very much in support of smoking bans. I would submit that it's my impression that most veterans fight for the right to have public forums and public votes like this here. When this came up 7 years ago, it was my sense that the majority of the people in the community supported some kind of a ban, but there was very little support for a 24-hour ban. And that's how we ended up with a 3-2 vote on what we have today. And I recall maybe the deciding factor in my vote at that time. There was a surgeon in town who has since passed away, who was a West Point grad, 20-year Army vet. And I asked him about the issue, and he said, well, my attitude is that your freedom ends where my nose begins. And that was kind of the comment that swayed me at the time. I thought it was a very reasonable compromise. I was invited to a tobacco coalition meeting a couple years ago, and a lady from Topeka excoriated Salina and this ridiculous ordinance we have, and so I went up to her after the meeting and said, well, you can blame me for that because I wasn't going to support a 24-hour ordinance at the time. The thing that has changed today is public opinion, and we can argue about how we got there, and I share some of the comments that have been made by smokers today. People opposed the ordinance about the Tobacco Coalition, but regardless of how we got here, public opinion is strongly in favor of smoking ordinances. I had another friend tell me just last week these things are coming worldwide. There's no point in fighting them. And I was struck by the article that Mr. O'Shea gave us at the beginning of the entire discussion that said 69% of those responding to the survey locally would support a 24-hour clean indoor ordinance. I think that's true, albeit I think it's kind of a passive support. Obviously, the people that are opposed get more angry and come to meetings and everything. But the bottom line is the majority of the public is solidly in favor of smoking bans. And furthermore, the reason I think that we should vote on this is that I don't want something on a ballot with some really far out stuff like banning smoking in patios. To me, you're either indoors or you're outdoors, and I don't want to, when we were arguing about this the first time, the comment was made that we will consider the Kansas outdoors sufficient ventilation, and I still feel that way. And now, I know that after we vote on this, it can get put, people can get signatures put on the ballot, and I hope that happens again. One last thing, I never really wanted to be in a position of having to deal with an issue like this again, but I am. And if this motion gets, if this ordinance that we have in front of us gets a motion in a second somewhere else, I'm going to vote in favor of it.
Comments or action?
I am one also that until I come to that vote, I don't know which way I'm going to go. In the meantime, I do want to say that I appreciate everyone that was passionate about this. That, to me, was more satisfying than anything else because I saw true democracy. Freedom was at its best, what everybody was talking about and parading about and passionate about. Everybody put in equal amount of time, work, effort, from the coalition to the tavern owners, to city staff, to our city council. I want to thank my fellow commissioners for taking the time to listen to everybody. I know everybody had phone calls, letters, emails. I thought the pool issue was heavy. No, that was a walk in the park compared to this. But you hired me. So every time you called my house or came into my office or sent me an email or sent me a letter, I read it. Tried to return phone calls when I could. If not, you called me back. So I appreciate that because you know that we all have another job besides this very important one, which I do take seriously. I'm hoping that if it doesn't go your way, that you will take it upon yourself to make a difference, whatever that may be. The deadline is tomorrow. Is it 12 noon for City Commission? Candidate filing. Also, take it upon yourself if it doesn't go the way you want it to go, to take it to the ballot so that we, the people, can take a stab at making a difference and voting for something together so that we can reach an agreement and get past this step.
Very quickly, this is truly the first item that's been brought on the agenda before us that I've truly lost sleep over. I do empathize with a lot of business owners here today and have been to about every bar in Salina, enjoyed a cold beer. And I do take individual business owners and property owners' rights very seriously and have disagreed with a lot of people whom I respect, who are non-smokers, who called me up and said, we don't agree with you on this one, Aaron, and we've engaged in very good dialogue, and so there's been a lot of people who I have a lot of admiration and respect for who don't necessarily agree with me on this issue. My own family isn't exactly behind me on this either. My brother had a debate yesterday with a relative arguing for smokers' rights as he held his oxygen. And it is a hot topic that is embedded deep in a lot of smokers' mentalities and non-smokers as well. To me, this is an extension of current ordinances that for a long time have placed the public safety and health above individual business owners' rights. Most of those have already been expressed, whether that's restaurant owners adhering to specific standards, whether that's a person wanting to put up their own building and having to follow building codes to make it safer for your family and mine to enter. We are a society that has got rid of the caveat emptor, buyer beware mentality a long time ago. Like it or not, we are a regulated society, and some of those regulations are intrusive and restrictive at times. But overall, I think as a whole we benefit from them. And when I ran for the City Commission, I did not run to have people tell me how to vote. I ran hoping those people had faith in how I would vote and the direction that and vision I had for the community, and I made it known that I wanted Salina to be a progressive community and not progressive in the sense of trendy and following every other communities, but progressive in the sense of I want to be on the right side of history. And looking back 10, 20 years from now, I think my vote will be. And I do support this ordinance and will be voting that way.
As someone brought up, we need to take a look at the big picture, and in my view of this whole ordinance, is to look at the big picture. I'm very much a believer in personal property rights. I'm very much a believer in individual rights. I believe in choice, and I believe in consequences of making those choices, either good or bad. I don't smoke. Don't like smoking. I own my own building. I'm the only one in my building. This ordinance takes away my rights to do with that building what I see fit to do with that building. I can't agree with it. It comes down to choice. I can fiddle with statistics that'll make me look like I'm 6'7" if I manipulate them right. So I'm not going to argue statistics with the coalition or with the smokers. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I do know, and I honestly don't know, if this ordinance were to pass, how many people are going to be affected, how many health-related issues will be affected 5 minutes after this ordinance passes. But I do know my rights as a building owner have been taken away. There are people's rights as business owners that have been taken away. In looking through the ordinance, probably the most important section of this ordinance is section 35(8), which is the declaration of establishment as non-smoking. To me, that answers it all. Your clientele, your customers will speak with their dollars. If they want you to be non-smoking, they won't patronize you. If they want you to be smoking, they'll patronize you. You should have that choice. At least, I certainly don't feel comfortable in making this decision that's going to affect everyone up and down the street of Santa Fe and Iron, 5th Street, 7th Street, 9th Street, whatever, because it will. I don't know how many people, how many non-smokers, how many smokers, the health side issue of this will affect. I can't answer that. I don't know. But I do know anyone that works in a business, owns property, will be affected. And I believe that it is not for the 5 of us to take that right away. So I will not support this ordinance, and I don't know which way it'll go. There hasn't even been a motion brought up yet, but I would encourage those to make it a public issue and put it on the ballot, and that way the citizens of Salina will get what they deserve, one way or the other. So I'll bring it back to the commission and ask one more time, are there any amendments that anyone would like to entertain? If not, I'll request action on this motion.
Point of order, I don't think we had a motion on the floor.
We do not.
Don't need a motion. I think, point of order, Greg, shouldn't we have a motion before we discuss amendments?
That is certainly a valid point. The suggested outline had more to do with being sure that the commission had an opportunity to explore amendments if that was the result of the input that has been received. I would think that it, as you may have seen in the outline, it was suggested that the matter if there were amendments, that the matter be held over, so those could be articulated, debated, and identified conceptually so that we could correctly craft the language that would accurately implement those concepts. But if that is not where any commissioner wishes to go, then I think you're correct. It is a matter of moving on to the item.
The reason I asked, I have a very minor matter I was thinking about raising as far as the prohibition around the entrances, but I'll bring that up after there's a motion, a second, if there is one, and it's a very minor matter.
Mayor, I would move that we approve ordinance number 09-10481 on second reading, amending Chapter 30.5 of the Salina Code pertaining to prohibiting smoking in public places.
I would second the motion. I would like to comment concerning amendments that any ordinance on our books can be amended virtually any time by the City Commission. So there are a few things in this ordinance, should it go ahead and pass today, that that might realistically warrant amendment. One thing that troubles me is that there are no exceptions whatsoever. And there might be a case, I was thinking particularly a case where a business may want to build a separate heated and air conditioning facility that allows smoking in conjunction with their business and have it totally mechanically separate, so it is effectively the same as an outdoor space. And if they wanted to do that under this ordinance, it wouldn't be legal, but that might be the kind of thing that someone may want to do and could be amended in the ordinance. Another thing that bothers me is this ordinance requires posting of non-smoking everywhere, which to me seems like an unnecessary rule, considering that the general attitude of the community already is largely non-smoking, and there are non-smoking facilities today that are in effect non-smoking, but they aren't posted. And if the whole community is non-smoking, why do we have to spend the money, time, and visual clutter of posting no smoking? I think if there were any exceptions, we ought to be posting a smoking allowed here warning, but otherwise non-smoking. And I noted yesterday I was at a meeting at Carter Center, which is a city facility. It has a smoking ashtray receptacle outside, but it doesn't say no smoking on the building. And the group that I was there was about 45 people, a private club, in effect, had a meeting. A couple of people did go smoke, but they went outside. Nobody even thought about lighting up inside. And it's not a posted building. At any rate, those are minor flaws that could be amended right now or could be amended later if the ordinance passes.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 09-10481, amending Chapter 30.5 of the Salina Code pertaining to prohibiting smoking in public areas.
Question, getting back to the matter of smoking around entrances. I had a gentleman talked to me about 10 days ago that has some sort of smoking area for his employees right off his back door, and suggested, hey, you're either inside or you're outside, and I kind of agree with that. I don't think smokers are hovering around the door trying to blow smoke on people that are walking in the door, and I didn't save the spreadsheet from the last meeting of all the other cities in town. Were some of those cities just silent on that issue, or I know one just spoke of, used the word reasonable distance. I might.
I think reasonable distance is a little too vague, and I think there is a bit of a problem with the 10-foot ordinance downtown. I know we have a non-smoking bar, we have two of them downtown, that have entrances to other businesses within 10 feet of their entrance.
Yeah. Commissioners, I can go through real quickly, this list. Abilene had reasonable distance, Derby 20 feet, Garden City 50 feet, Harvey County 20 feet, Heston 20 feet, Hutchinson 15 feet, Leawood 10 feet, Lenexa 10 feet, Manhattan 20 feet, Mission 20 feet, Newton 20 feet, Olathe 10 feet, Overland Park 10 feet, Shawnee, 10 feet, Winfield, 10 feet, and that's it, as far as what we know.
Oh,
I'm asking, are you proposing an amendment?
so if, I guess I'm asking the other commissioners' thoughts on that first.
Well, and that brings a good point. I was visiting real quickly here with the mayor. If someone is smoking outside the front door of my office and it is within 10 feet, who is in violation? The smoker or I am?
Both the way it's written.
Well,
Both be cited, and who enforces that? Just law enforcement?
Commissioner, I'm not sure it would be both in all situations. I think, and I may defer this to Greg, but I think the question may be who has control of the area in front of your building. For example, if you have a large lot and you have plenty of space and you control that area within 10 feet, it's possible then that you could be cited as well. Greg concurs. If, let's say, though, it's a right-of-way and you don't have control over that, then you don't have the ability to do anything about that. I wouldn't think then that you could be cited for that aspect.
Well, what I'm saying is there is not 10 feet between me and the next door of my business. So obviously the rule is going to apply to my neighbor. It's going to apply to me, which means that the whole area will then become not exempt, but enforced that way, because we're all within 10 feet of one another. Okay. But if someone is smoking there, who's cited? And who enforces that? The police officer has to be driving down the street and says, oh, someone's smoking in front of her office.
I think, first of all, you look at the smoker as a direct violation. And just because they could be cited doesn't mean they couldn't be given a warning as well. So the other thing is...
Do I go out and tell them to put the cigarette out?
Please.
Do I go out and tell them to not?
I think that's your choice, but I think you'd have to look back into the ordinance and look at the obligations on the proprietor. And let's say that you've fulfilled your obligations. You have signage, you train your employees, et cetera, et cetera. Let's say it's an area that you can control, okay? And you've asked them not to smoke. You've done what you could do. I think all that goes into the question as to whether you're cited or not. And I don't know, Greg, if there's anything you'd like to add.
No, I think that's an accurate explanation there in 30.5-9, paragraph 1.
Follow-up question, then, if it were to read, smoking is prohibited within a reasonable distance of the main entrance, would that then leave it to the business owner to define reasonable, and if they feel they're too close, they can ask the person to move away, or?
It's a whole lot of...
And it sounds more like something that the municipal court judge will be asked to address. Just as short of, and I think that's why you see those distances as an effort to quantify that to a more manageable.
Okay, I'll leave that one alone then.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Staff response to Abner's comment about making businesses post that everywhere, if we remove that requirement?
Well, from a policy perspective, I think most of those folks that live in Salina, commute to Salina to work, whomever that might be, it won't take long for them to be familiar with this ordinance if, in fact, it's approved. Probably the biggest benefit, if you did have signage, would be for those who are visiting from outside the community who come in who have no idea whatsoever, who instead of having the embarrassment once they light up inside of being told, no, you can't do that, simply see the sign and then they know that they're not supposed to do that. So if there's any benefit to the signage, it's to those who aren't familiar with the rules and regulations in Salina, Kansas.
Can the Smoking Prevention Partnership provide free signs
That's a good
out of their
question.
budget? I got a nod from
It's an
Dr.
affirmative
Davis,
nod,
yes.
Out of my own personal money, I'll make the sign.
Thank you, Dr. Davis.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Are there any amendments to be
Mayor?
offered?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I had one quick point of clarification. As you look at the draft that was included in your item today, and if you look under section 30-5-7, there toward the top of page 5 of the ordinance, you will see under subpoint 3, and this again has to do with the exemption for the open areas. In parentheses toward the end, you will see except as provided in section 30.5-6 above. You might recall I mentioned briefly that is in parentheses because it was not language included among the amendments on first reading. It is a suggestion that I would make to better reconcile that exemption with the distance from the doorway matter. That was, I think, a small technical point, but I didn't want to, that would be one actually thing that we should probably amend from first reading if you want to add the language in parentheses.
The language being except as provided in section 30.5-6.
Correct.
Yeah, I'll make that motion that we add that little phrase to the text.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to amend section 35.7, number 3, to add except as provided in section 30.56 above. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Aye. Motion passes 4-1. Veneer voting against. Again, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Are we ready to call the question?
Okay.
Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jelka?
Aye.
Commissioner Larson?
No.
Commissioner Peck?
Aye.
Commissioner Perney?
My family will forgive me. Aye.
Mayor Veneer?
No. Motion passes 3-2 with Larson and Veneer voting no. Is there any other business to come before the commission? Then we will stand adjourned. Thank you.
One more comment, but I don't get it out, and that is,